Hi, everybody. You might be approaching the end of your financial year, and it's the perfect time to get your Sage 50 accounts in order. The year end process itself is simple. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if it's your first time, it's just a few steps in the wizard. But before you dive in, there are some important checks and housekeeping tasks that will just make everything run smoothly. Things like archiving your company data just keeps it organized and improves performance. We'll show you how to create an archive and why it's a good habit. Then there's backing up your data, which is essential before making any changes, and we'll share best practice just to ensure your backups are reliable. And avoid accidental postings into a closed period by setting a lock date. It's quick to do and it saves headaches later. We'll also guide you through the year end wizard as well, step by step, so you can complete the process with confidence. If you need to tidy up old or unused records, we'll show you how to do that as well in our Delete Your Records webinar. And then we'll also cover how to clear the audit trail. It can help speed things up, and we'll explain when it's appropriate and how to do that safely. So, to help you to prepare, we're hosting a series of live webinars throughout January and February. These sessions will give you practical tips and demonstrations so you feel confident about your year end and keep your accounts in great shape. Don't miss this opportunity to start the new year with clean, organised data and peace of mind. Make sure you reserve your spot today at sage.co.uk/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Hi everyone, it's that time again when you might be starting to think about your year end. The year end process itself is straightforward. It's a simple wizard that includes a few options. However, before this, there's the preparation stage, ensuring you've posted everything, and of course, it involves running reports. But do you understand your reports and also the opportunities that you have to develop them? Ensuring they're accurate, but also that they provide you with a correct level of detail. Throughout January and February, we're running a series of live webinars to help develop your knowledge and understanding of the management reports available in Sage 50 accounts. We'll be starting with the basics, understanding nominal records and the structure of the nominal ledger. This is also ideal if you need to create new nominal codes. Following on from this, we'll examine the chart of accounts, looking at all aspects, including adding new layouts and editing existing ones. Our attention then turns to the management reports themselves, the trial balance, the profit and loss, and of course the balance sheet. We'll explain how to run them, what they show, and most importantly, how the figures calculate. We want you to be confident. On the management report session, one of the most common scenarios we're asked about is where you haven't yet run your year end, but need to generate a profit and loss report for your next financial year. We've got your back with this and have a specific webinar that explores the options you have available, whether it's running reports for your new financial year or even a previous one. The last webinar in the series looks at reconciling your age debtors and age creditor reports at year end, ensuring that the balances agree with the figures on your trial balance and the balance sheet. Of course, this could be done at any time, such as part of your month-end process. So come along and we'll demonstrate what to check and how to run them to ensure everything agrees. If you'd like to attend any or all of these sessions to help develop your knowledge and boost your confidence, then simply head along to sage.co.uk/webinars and register for your free place. These, along with loads of other topics, including how to run your year end, are available. See you soon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this afternoon's session. This afternoon, obviously looking at Sage 50 accounts, and specifically we're looking at the chart of accounts. So this forms part of the I suppose the management report series that we just mentioned in that little video. So you're looking at your trial balance, sorry, not your trial balance. If you're looking at your profit loss or your balance sheet, you're thinking, where do those figures come from? Attending this session will help. And when you start looking at your management reports, you might think, actually, I need a little bit more detail showing on there. So again, this session will show you how you can do that. Now, the session itself should last about 45 minutes. Now, some of you, I'm sure you will be very familiar with this area. You probably attended a webinar before. Others, you'll be very new to it. So again, hopefully you'll be feeling a lot more confident. It might give you some ideas as to how you can develop the likes of your profit and loss and your balance sheet going forward. Right, we'll quickly pick up on a little bit of housekeeping just before we do get started. So I'll find the right option. There we go. So as usual, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one and you enable it on the way in, you'll find that it's just muted automatically. You can't unmute yourself. Any questions for me today? It's just myself running this session with you. So you'll not get a written answer today. If I see any questions or comments, I'll just try and react to them. I'll read them out, and where possible, I'll include it in a demo or just give you a straightforward answer. But you'll not see anyone else's questions. That was mentioned this morning when I was running it by myself this morning. So you'll not see anyone else's questions this morning. But keep your questions and your comments coming. I'll try my best to pick those up as I run through. I'll hang on for questions at the end as well. If anyone wants a copy of today's slides, now there's minimal slides today because it is nearly all demonstration for you. So we'll be cracking on with that in just a moment. But if you do want a copy of today's slides, they are available in the usual way. The session is being recorded, so if you need a bit of a recap, watch out for your follow-up email. We can always include a link to the recording on that. The email you'll receive around about an hour after you finish, and that will also include a link so you can register for our upcoming webinars. Timetable currently runs up to the end of March, and that includes our digital badge series for invoicing as well. So if you are interested, do take a look, get yourself signed up. There'll also be a link to our recordings page, so well over 100 different recordings on there. So if you missed any, or you just maybe want a bit of a recap on something you attended a while ago, they're available for you. Right, now this is the agenda for this afternoon's session. So a little bit of background to what the chart of accounts actually is, so a bit of an introduction to that one. And then, as I say, we're just going to get stuck into a demonstration today. Just to hopefully give you a much better understanding of what the chart of accounts is, how it works, and also, if necessary, how you can amend it. The most difficult part of the chart of accounts to get your head around is the floating categories. And if you can get your head around that bit, and I'll try and keep it in simple terms, but if you can get your head around that bit, the rest is really straightforward. What I also want to do, and if you were on the year-end session this morning, something we always pick up on, checking your chart of accounts for errors. You want to make sure there are no missing nominal codes or ranges that overlap, etc. Really easy to do, and generally quite easy to fix as well. Normally just a case of adjusting a range or adding in a new nominal code. Right at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support, and if there are any outstanding questions that I haven't been able to pick up, I'll hang around and try and pick those up. Maybe even run a few extra demos here and there as well. Right, okay, let's get stuck in then. So a little bit of background first of all, what is the chart of accounts? Well, basically, it provides the structure for some of your, not all of your management reports, but some of your management reports. So it's used by things like your profit and loss and your balance sheet. It's used by a number of other areas as well, variance report, prior year report, the comparative P&L report, the nominal ledger view, if you're in analyzer view as opposed to just the nominal ledger list. It's also used by things like if you use the advanced budgeting area. But generally, when you're going to see it most is when you run a P&L or a balance sheet, and it's the chart of accounts that provides the structure. It tells those reports what nominal codes to pick up, which ones to include, which ones to merge together. Now you can have multiple layouts. So you may have different charts of accounts, and hopefully this will become apparent why as we go through the demos. But you can have multiple charts of accounts or help files. So if you imagine about it, you used to get help files installed with your software way back in the day, rather than it all being online. So I'm talking about version 2 of Sage 50. The help files back then, it used to say you could have 64,000 different chart of accounts layouts. Now you're never going to get anywhere near that. It's common, obviously you've got to have one. It's common to have more than one. You might have them for maybe you've only wanted to pick up certain nominal codes for department reasons. You might have just different variants of the P&L. So you might have a very detailed chart of accounts for P&L purposes when you're generating a profit and loss for internal purposes. But externally, if you're seeing the bank manager, for instance, you might have more of a summary. So you don't need a detailed breakdown of your sales section, for instance. Now it's something that you can have a go of, so you can copy your chart of accounts and play around with it. Something I would maybe encourage as well, you can always do, if you don't want to do it in your live company, you can do it in the demonstration data or the practice company. Something that's really easy, and hopefully you'll have picked it up by the time we get onto that, by the time we finish today. Right, okay, let's get stuck into a bit of a demonstration then. So we're going to look at adding and editing and deleting charts of accounts. We'll look at the categories, the nominal ranges, the floating categories. As I say, that's the most complicated part, and also checking for errors. We'll switch across to my desktop. We'll get stuck in. So to access the chart of accounts, we go to nominal codes, and then on the toolbar at the top, we've got the chart of accounts option. And when we click that, this is where it will list any layouts that you've got. So you're going to have one, probably by default, it'll actually be called the default layout of accounts. You can see I've got two, but as I mentioned, it's as good as unlimited. I think the most I've ever come across in my time when I worked on support would be maybe about 20, and that would have been for probably department reasons. These days, you've got much more powerful departmental reporting area, unlikely that you're going to have that. But if needed, you can set up different layouts. Now, you can see I've got two. So as I mentioned, the places where you're going to see this probably most likely is when you run the P&L via this icon at the top here. So when you run that report, as well as it prompting you for what period do you want to run that for, it'll also ask you which chart of accounts layout you want to use. So if you've got more than one on the drop down, you can select. So you can choose the format that you want. So that's the profit and loss balance sheet, pretty much the same. Again, same sort of criteria, and also which chart of accounts layout do you want to use. Other options where you will see it, like the comparative P&L. So just again preview that one. Again, it's going to ask me for what date range, but also part of that criteria, which chart of accounts do you want to use? The other one within the nominal codes area is if you switch to analyzer view. So this option here in the top right, if you switch, you then get this sort of layout instead. So you can start drilling down into your sales and your product sales, etc., to all the way down to nominal code if required. And this is where you will have things like you can switch the chart of accounts if you prefer. But generally, most people will be in list view, and it's probably the P&L and balance sheet where you're probably going to see that most likely. Right, let's get into the chart of accounts itself. And we're just going to quickly run through these options along the top of this window. If you want quite an old version, it would have to be quite an old version now, you'll have these similar options, but you'll see them along the bottom. So add, probably self-explanatory, that one. It adds a new layout. So when you click it, it's just going to ask you for a name. Just put my initials in. And it adds it, gives you a blank chart of accounts where you can start adding in your own ranges, etc. I'm going to pick up on these warning messages, etc. a little bit later on. But now we're just going to close out. Also where it says partial, I'm going to pick up on that a little bit later on as well. So add basically generates a blank structure, and you need to start adding in the ranges yourself. Edit just opens the one that you've got highlighted, and you can view the ranges, etc. Start amending them, make changes. Copy. Now copy, it isn't available if you're on the essentials level, the copy option. If you need to copy a chart of accounts, if you're on essentials, then there is information in our help center on how to do that. But what copy basically does, if you highlight the one you want to copy, you click copy, adds a new one to the end. It'll say copy, in this case, one of the default layout of accounts. And then you can highlight that and you can start editing that and making changes if you want to. Much easier than clicking add and starting from scratch. It's a bit like invoice layouts. We always say find the one that's close to what you want and then make changes, as opposed to starting from scratch. It'd probably take you a long time to set up a chart of accounts layout from scratch. Much easier just to get yours, copy it, and then start making changes to it. Next, we've got make default. Now, if we highlight this one at the bottom, the one that says copy one of default layout of accounts, and then I click make default, you'll see it puts that description at the bottom where it says current, and it means that that's the default now. Nothing to do with the description of it, just means it's the default. Now, where the default's used is when you go to run a report, such as the P&L. So when I run that one, I've got it here, chart of accounts, and it will give me, it will basically default to whichever I've got flagged as the one that's flagged as being the current or the default. That's all that does. So if you're ever coming into the likes of your P&L and you think, I always need to choose chart of accounts number 2, that's the most common one I use, change it, set it as the default. That's all that does. You can always select a different one, but by default, it will pick that up, whatever's flagged as the current. Now, the idea of flagging one as being the current is that it sort of protects it as well. You've got to have one of them flagged as the current. It brings me on nicely to the default, the delete option, sorry. Now, if I highlight a chart of accounts, which isn't flagged as being the current, and I click delete, it just prompts me, are you sure you wish to delete that one? If I click yes, it's gone. Now, if I try this one, when it's flagged as the current, which means it's essentially it's protected, if I try and delete it, so it's still prompted, are you sure you wish to delete it? So yes to that. And then it says you cannot delete the default chart of accounts. So whichever is flagged as the default at the bottom there, the one that says current. Now I'm going to set this one back as the default. So just highlight it, make default. Update it at the bottom. If I now want to get rid of that one, I can highlight it, click delete, just click yes, it's gone. So that's make default. It has two purposes. One, it protects it so that you've got to have at least one chart of accounts. And the other is it'll flag it as the default so that when you do go to run reports, it's selected automatically for you. Maybe just saves you a couple of clicks when you run a report. Now the print list and send to Excel, I think really you're probably not going to use these unless maybe you do have 64,000 different layouts on this list. It just prints out the descriptions. sent to Excel. I'll just give that a quick click just so you can see. So let's see if we can find out where it's opening. I've got 3 screens on the go today. So just drag that across so you can see it. And again, it just brings across that list of descriptions for you from that chart of accounts window. That might be useful if maybe you want to circulate that type of thing and say, right, if you've got multiple colleagues who use Sage and they've got different charts of accounts set up, who uses what? It might just be a case of, can you flag the ones that you do use, the rest we're going to get rid of. But other than that, you're unlikely you're going to maybe use these 2 options. Just for consistency though, they are there. Right, let's get stuck into editing then. So we're going to concentrate on this default layout of accounts, which is just the standard one that's installed with your installation. Now, when we go into the edit window, first of all, we've got 2 tabs. We've got the profit and loss and the balance sheet. We toggle between them. You can see pretty much the same. Obviously, pick up we've got different descriptions in there, pick up different ranges of nominal codes as well. But the layout of the screen is pretty much the same. You've got your title at the top as well. So if you need to change that description, you can do that. But let's start with the profit loss. Profit loss shows the sections that you would expect to see on a profit and loss. So sales, purchases, direct expenses, overheads, taxation. You can rename them if you want to. So if I wanted to call mine income, I can do that. Changes it on this preview panel on the right. Just going to set that back to sales. Again, you'll see it update. Now you've got these 5 sections. It does look like you can add another one, but you can't. It is just a blank line. So I can try clicking there, but it doesn't let me. But as you click through these sections, you'll see that this bottom section, the nominal ranges, it actually changes. Now, if we just concentrate on sales for the time being. So in the sales section, we've got some descriptions and we've got some ranges based around low and high. And if you attended the nominal record session, you'll be aware that generally sales, they're in the 4,000 range. Now, the way that your chart of accounts works, it's got some descriptions and they're based on a low and high value. Now, that could be for a range of nominal codes. It could be for a single nominal code. We'll talk about changing them in just a moment. So what we've got at the minute is we've got one called product sales, and we've got 4,000 to 4,099. Now, what that would mean is if I was to generate a P&L report, it's going to go through each of these sections. And so it's going to look at product sales. It's going to say, right, well, for the date range you've specified on this chart of accounts, I've got a heading of product sales, and it's going to add up all of the relevant balances for whatever date range you specified for all of the nominal codes in this range. And if there is an overall balance on your report, it's going to say product sales, and it would show the period value and a year-to-date value. So that's how it's using it. Now you can't say, what I can't do is say, I want it to pick up 4,000 and 4,002, but I don't want it to pick up 4,001 in this range. I can't do that. It's based around a low and a high value. So that's something to bear in mind when you come to set up new nominal codes. Do you want to report on it separately, or are you quite happy to have it grouped? Now, Miriam, you mentioned there, you've set up a new layout, but you can't see how or if you can add a subtotal to your own layout. You can't. The subtotals are going to be per section. So you'll have a subtotal for sales, a subtotal for purchases, direct expenses, overheads, taxation, etc. But I couldn't have subtotals within sort of the sales section, as it were. The only way I could do that is by grouping them together. But I couldn't have, say, product sales and export sales listed, and then have a subtotal of those two, and then it continue on with, say, sale of assets, credit charges, other sales. I can't do that. It doesn't let you. Now in this section, you can have up to 80 nominal ranges. And that's the same for all the other sections as well. So purchases, you can have 80 ranges, direct expenses, 80, overheads, 80, taxation, 80. 80 is the max in any one section. The only time I've come across someone maybe using 80 ranges is maybe in the overhead section, when you want maybe a bit more detail. But 80 is the limit, it is the restriction. Now let's say when I generate my report, I'm thinking, well, rather than just having one called product sales, I actually want it to show, I want to narrow down my ranges. I don't want to have to generate the reports and drill down and have to run other reports to try and find the information I'm after. I want it just to show nominal 4,000 as a separate balance, as it were. So I've got an example here, so I'll just close out of that one. And we've got an example here where the sales section is much more detailed. It looks like this. So it says, I've got my description in there, and it's 4,000 to 4,000. Then we got another description, 4,001 to 4,001. That just generally means when I'm running a P&L report, if I use this chart of accounts, it's going to show me a description, sales north, and then it would show me the balance for that individual nominal code, because I've just got it picking up the one in this instance. Well, I'm not having then to drill down to get at that level of information. It's just providing it on the core report. Now I'm going to show you how you can get sort of to this stage. So we'll close back out, we'll go back to the original, we'll edit it, and we're going to amend this product sales range. So let's say we do want individual nominal codes. Now what I want to do is and this is something I would always recommend, try and keep your nominal codes in numerical order in your chart of accounts if you can. It makes it so much easier. Imagine if you've got 80 ranges and they're all mixed up, and it just makes it a bit more tricky to try and track down. Nothing to say you can't do that. All I'm saying is if you do have issues and you need to try and find that issue, it just makes it a bit easier to read. Now let's say product sales, I want to change this to sales north. So a bit like what I had in the other chart of accounts. And rather than it being 4,000 to 4,099, I'm going to do 4,000 to 4,000. Now, as that stands, it means anything that was in the original range, 4,000 to 4,099, 4,000 is still included on my report, but anything in the range 4,001 to 4,099 is no longer included. It's not included in any of these other ranges. Now, I might amend a range, I might change that one, 4,001 to 4,199, but actually I want to show some of the others as individuals. So I'm going to click on this line, and what I'm going to do, two function keys which are useful, F7 and F8. We'll start with F7. So if I press F7, I get this confirmation message pop up saying inserting a line will move all categories down by one, and you will lose any information on the last line of the section. Are you sure you want to continue? Now what that means is if I've got anything on the 80th row in this section, by inserting a line, I'm going to push that off the end of the list, as it were. It doesn't mean that I would lose this one, because that's only on the 5th line at the minute. So it just moves from wherever I've got highlighted, it moves everything down by one. So it's only if it's on the 80th line that this would become relevant. So just click yes. What we now see, if I scroll back up, we've got that gap. Now I'm just going to do a few of those inserts. Just keep clicking yes. So I've got some blanks. Now, if you've got loads of ranges, you might even insert blank lines. Just makes no difference, those blank lines. They'll not appear on your report. So again, Miriam, if you looked at that and you thought, well, maybe if I leave a gap, it'll put a total in, it won't, unfortunately. Be a good idea if you had that option, but it won't do it currently. Anyway, clicking back up to here, we're going to do sales south. So we'll pop in a description. Let's correct that so it looks consistent. And we'll do 4001 to 4001. I'll keep going, do a few others. And then I'm just pressing the tab key to move down to the next line. And then we're going to call it sales, and I'll just do miscellaneous. Nope. And then what I'll do is, remember the range we had, 4,000 to 4,099. I'm going to maintain that, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the rest of the range in, as it were, as a separate range. So I'm still picking up 4,000, 4,001, 2, 3, but then what was the rest of the range I'm picking up separately. So I still want the rest of it to be added together. Simon, you mentioned there the trouble you have is if you want to move likes of one of your other ranges to a different position. Again, if it's a blank line, I don't think you'll be able to, I don't think it's got a copy option on this one. Just try it. It does. If you do Control C, make sure you highlight it. Control C. Well, let's highlight it. It will copy it, but you'll need to move either type in the range, which is probably just as easy, or again Control C, Control V to paste. Just get rid of that for the time being. Now I could leave it like that if I wanted to. I could leave that gap, but let's say I want to tidy things up. I want to get rid of that blank line. So the other function key you're going to use, and this is again something you'll use when you're entering data, just F8. So it deletes the line and moves everything back up one. That's it. So if we've amended that range, so we now, if we run a P&L, it would say sales north. If there is a balance, it would show that separately for nominal 4,000. So that's how you go about amending your ranges. So remember F7 inserts a line, or you can just click down to a blank line and start typing. And you'll get that message when you press F7. And F8 discards a line. Probably come across that when you're doing batch transactions, like a batch of payments, and you think, oh, I've missed one. I want it to go in the middle of that group of transactions. Just click F7, it'll insert a blank line above where you've got highlighted. Or if you go down to the next line and you think, actually, I don't need to enter that one, you can just press F8 to discard it. Anyway, we're going to save those changes. See what I've done in a moment. I'm going to check the chart of accounts. Now it does say the word partial. Now the word partial on your description means you've got some sort of error in there. So if I click back into it and we click check at the top, and it will come up with a list there. So I'll just preview that one, see what it says. Oh, you might remember that particular nominal code from the nominal codes. I thought I don't normally get an error there, but I've got an additional nominal code now. I'm just going to quickly get rid of that nominal code because that was just for something we covered in the nominal records session. So we'll just get rid of it. So I'll just highlight it and delete it. I've obviously used it. Let's have a look. Have I? Let's try one more time. I'll come back to that one. Right. Anyway, we'll go back to chart of accounts. And as you can see, mine says partial. If you've got one that says partial, what a lot of people do is they go into edit and they'll try and get rid of the word partial off the end. They'll save the changes. Get a message, a warning, incomplete chart of accounts. Tells me the chart of accounts was updated successfully, so just okay, but it puts the word partial on. So the only way you can get rid of the word partial from your description is by making sure you've got no errors. So if I go back to edit mine, I'm just going to put, I'll tag a 1 on the end just so we can get rid of that error, put my initials on. And it was that one. Check now. Do you want to save the changes? Yes. No errors found in the chart of accounts this time. And when I save that, tells me it's updated successfully, and you'll see it automatically removes the word partial. So if you've got any that say partial, then that's why you've got some errors in there. Now, when you click that check option, it will look for a number of things. One is that all your nominal codes in your nominal ledger list are included in one of your ranges. It'll look for nominal codes that may be included in 2 ranges. Now, by that, if I did, let's say 4000 to 4001, what it would mean is when I'm generating my P&L reports, nominal code 4000, the balance will be picked up in this first range, but it would also be included in this secondary one because of the range. And that means I will be double counting that. It's going to show it twice on the report. So it's going to check for that type of thing. So it's going to look for nominal codes that are essentially included in more than one range. Obviously, because of that, it means that the ranges overlap onto each other. So it'll check for that as well. It will also check for ranges that are fully enclosed within another range. So I did 4000 on that one. It would mean that this one here is included in this one. This one is fully enclosed within this one. So it would mean I'm double counting. In this Sales Scotland, it would mean I'm counting nominal 4000, 4001 and 4002. And again, it's going to mean that my figures are incorrect. So I'll set that one back just to get rid of any ranges. Again, try and get in the habit. If you make any changes, use that check option at the top. It's going to get you to save the changes. It'll update it. And then this is what you want. No errors found in this chart. If it prompts you with a print a preview file or email option, then you know you've got some issues in there. Now that's the core of the chart of accounts. The balance sheet is pretty much the same. There is one exception, and I mentioned this was the difficult part to get your head around. So if we click through them, I'm going to come back to the current assets and the current liabilities in a moment, but fixed assets, you've got the relevant descriptions and the relevant nominal ranges that it's going to pick up. Same for your long-term liabilities, not much in there, but again, you could have up to 80 different ranges. And same for capital and reserves. The difference is current assets and current liabilities. And it's this bit here where it's split into 2. Now this middle section, sorry, same for current liabilities as well. You'll find it's split between this sort of bottom where you've got the ranges, it splits it. So the middle section on both current assets and current liabilities works in exactly the same way. You've got your descriptions, you've got a low and a high value. Same for current liabilities. The difference is this bit at the bottom. This is what we term the floating categories or the floating nominal ranges, floating nominal accounts, whatever you want to call them. I think they're now called floating nominal accounts using this description here. Now you have this section in both the current assets and the current liabilities, and those two sections should be identical. They should be an exact copy of each other. So you can see here we've got bank account 1200 to 1209 VAT liability. If we click into current liabilities, you'll see we've got exactly the same descriptions and ranges. Now the reason for these, the floating nominal codes, is that for some of your nominal codes, chances are that the balance may be positive or maybe negative. Sometimes you'll have a debit balance, sometimes you'll have a credit balance. So your bank account, for instance, might not always be a positive value. Sometimes you might be overdrawn. It might be you're always overdrawn, and maybe sometimes you've got a positive balance going the other way. So what the floating nominal accounts do is it allows the balance to float between the two sections. So if we were to run a balance sheet, for instance, and it looks at the bank account, the range 1200 to 1209, and it works out the balance. And it says, right, well, for that bank account, we've got with debit balance being a positive balance, it would show that as a current asset. If, on the other hand, it calculated a negative balance for that nominal code or the range of nominal codes, so let's say it calculates an overdrawn balance, so you'd have a credit balance, it would actually show as a current liability. So it means it can float between the two sections depending on whether it's a positive or a negative balance, or debit or credit balance. And the VAT liability works in the same way. So this is very generic. Obviously, VAT liability for a lot of businesses, you're probably always in a position where liability. Others, you might always be in a position generally where you could recover an amount of VAT. So again, VAT liability, it covers the key sort of VAT accounts, the control accounts and the VAT liability account itself. Again, you could break these ranges down if you wanted to, but whatever changes you make in either the current assets or the current liabilities floating ranges, you need to make the same changes in the other section. I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. So again, VAT liability, if it calculates 1 month when you've got a liability, that's going to show in your current liabilities section on your balance sheet. If you're in a position where you can recover an amount, then it would show as a current asset. So it can float between the two. Then again, dependent on depending on the balance. Jonathan, you mentioned there, if your range of bank accounts is set as floating and some balances are positive and others negative, does it show the net balance or does it split the balances? So in this case, it depends on the range. So it's adding up the balances for the range 1200 to 1209. That's no different to, like, say, the product sales that we looked at earlier. We broke it down so we can see it. So if you want your individual bank accounts to show in that way, so you can see I've got up here, we've got deposits in cash 1210 to 1239, which covers a broader range of codes. So it's adding those together. If maybe some of those accounts are overdrawn, some aren't, if I want to show them separately, you can either pop them in this section at the top, break it down in the same way, or pop it in this section at the bottom. Now the difference is, if you pop it in at the top, so let's say I put the bank account 1200 to 1209 in this section, it means it's no longer floating, which means if I run the balance sheet and it calculates a positive balance, it's going to include it in the current assets section. It shows it a positive balance. If it's in this section and I run the balance sheet and it calculates an overdrawn balance, it would still show as in the current assets section when I generate the report, but it would show in brackets as a negative. So it depends how you want them to display. But if it's within the floating, it means it can float between the two, depending on what those balances are. So if I wanted all my bank accounts, deposits and cash, maybe I want to break that down and I want potentially to have them floating between the two, I would strip it out of this section and I would pop it into this section. Some of the accounts, you might leave them behind in the top section. Others, you might bring into the floating. Now, if you can get your head around that bit, that's the hardest part of the chart of accounts. Now, if you make a change, so if I just put my initials in again as an example, and when I press the tab key, I'll get this message. Do you wish to copy this range to the current liabilities? You're only going to get this if you amend the floating nominal accounts in current assets or liabilities. So if I click yes, it means whatever changes I make here will automatically copy across. So if I do, let's just say 1270. I don't even think I've got a nominal code set up for that. I don't, but let's pretend I did. So I would pop that range in there. And if I switch to the current liabilities section, it's automatically copied in there for me. So if you're using those floating nominal account ranges, you need to make sure the current assets and the current liabilities, make sure they've got the same descriptions, make sure they've got the same ranges as well. Sally, you mentioned there, how did you make the floating area? It's done for you. You'll only see the floating categories if you're on the balance sheet and you're in the current assets or the current liabilities section. Every other section in your chart of accounts, you just get that one sort of standard range, as it were. But current assets, current liabilities, it's split in two. So these ones act the same. This sort of middle section works the same as everything else in your chart of accounts, all the other ranges, whereas this one on current assets, current liabilities, it means it floats between the two. I'm going to pick up Rachel's query as well at this point. So Rachel's mentioning there, she's got other sales 490 to 4999, which is same as mine. But she's got a nominal code in the middle of that range, 4904. So what's the short separate? So question there, do you need to change other sales to 4900 to 4903? Then you would have 4904 to 4904 as a separate line. And then to maintain and make sure everything's still picked up, you would have 4905 to 4999. So you're spot on, Rachel, in your thinking. You've split that range. If you were in a position where 4904, you wanted to bring that out of that range, basically you're going to need to set up a new nominal code for it. So in as an example, mine runs up to 4499. So essentially from 4500 to 4899, I don't have anything for that in my chart of accounts. So it means potentially I could create a new nominal code, maybe transfer your balance from 4904 across to that new nominal code. And it means that what you're left with, you could leave other sales intact as this range, because the original 4904, you transferred the balance out of that and it's no longer in use. I hope that makes sense. Katrina, you mentioned when you add a code into your chart of accounts that's been missed, when you hit save, you get a message about checking buckets. I'm assuming that it's your monthly balances it's on about, but I've not come across that when you do it. You see it takes 9 hours to run that check. I'll get in touch with our support team, give them a call, let them have a look at that with you. I would encourage you, if you can, check your data beforehand though, please. So file maintenance, check data, let it run through, see if you have any errors, warnings or comments before you get in touch with them. But if you get in touch, they'll be able to have a look at that with you and see what the problem is. Hope that makes sense. So again, just going back to Katrina's, sorry, it wasn't Katrina, it was Rachel's question about splitting your ranges. It brings through the importance of when you set up new nominal codes, giving it the appropriate number. Now, some of you will go away today and you might think, well, actually, I need to pull an individual nominal code out of a range so I can account for it separately. You can do it in the way that we just mentioned for Rachel. Or it may be that you set up a new nominal code, transfer the balance across. It may mean even editing the transactions to move the balance across. Do it a couple of different ways. And then just adding that as a separate range. So you've got a few options, but again, I'm hoping maybe after you've attended management reports as well, that it'll get you thinking a bit about, right, do I need to amend the chart of accounts to get the level of detail that I'm after? Right, any final questions at all? If you do have any, if you want to submit them now, I will pick them up in just a moment. Right, now we do have loads of other webinars on the go at the moment as well. We started, was it yesterday? We looked at the management reports. Well, there was a recording of that one, and the management report session should be repeated next week if you want to come along to that one. We're also going to be looking at management reports for how you can generate them for a future financial year. So it's very common if you haven't yet run your year end and you're thinking, well, I need a P&L for what will be my new financial year and I'm not ready to run that year end yet. What options have you got? So we'll be covering that in the other webinar as well. So if you do want to get signed up, the links are included on your follow-up email, or just head along to sage.co.uk/webinars. Get yourself signed up there. Right, now it does bring me to the end of today's session. I'm going to hang around, see if any questions do come through. I think we're on the ball with the questions at the moment, but let me thank you for attending. I hope you've enjoyed it. For some of you, judging by those questions, it's just clicked, you've got it. Maybe by the lack of questions, you either don't get it at all and you're watching the recording, or you just think, well, I sort of knew that. Whatever position you're in, hopefully you feel a bit more confident. If you've got any questions afterwards, you think of any, get in touch. You can reply to any of the webinar emails. Or alternatively, if you need to speak to someone, get in touch with our support team. Any final questions before we wrap up? As usual, there will be a little exit survey pop up. If you could share any thoughts or ideas that you have, take a minute to complete that. Greatly appreciate it. We love reading those comments just to see if we've hit the mark. Any topics you'd like to see covered going forward, and thoughts and ideas that you have, let us know. Your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. So if you need a bit of a recap on anything we've covered today, just watch out for that. Right, we've got no additional questions, so we'll end the webinar at that point. Do get yourself signed up for some of the additional sessions, and hopefully I'll see you on them very soon. Many thanks.